Addiction, more than a substance. Much of the research from this speech has come from Dr. Broderick's Drugs and Human Behavior class, the material I've been exposed to in class, Dr. Raymond's book Unchain Your Brain, as well as some personal struggles with addiction. How do people get hooked on a substance, whether legal or illegal? If people are compared with the vervet monkeys on the island of St. Kitts, it is arguable that people are genetically predisposed to addiction. If heavy drinking runs in one's family, it is possible, or family history, it's possible that person could develop an addiction to alcohol. The monkeys, based on their history, have a genetic predisposition to alcohol if it's compared to their actions at present. Aside from predisposition, there are various other factors. Perhaps the most important is brain function. The way we treat our brains determines how our brains will treat us. Everything we consume, food, beverage, alcohol, legal or illegal drugs, cigarettes, our daily activities, all of that affects our brain, and that in turn affects how we act. The prefrontal cortex is our commander-in-chief. When we're young, we don't have a strong prefrontal cortex. Our brains will learn from experience if they're treated with care at a young age. Parents need to pay attention to what I'm saying. What they do at home, their behavior, how they treat or do not treat their children, what they feed or do not feed their children, what they do and they do not discuss with their children, all affects the prefrontal cortex. According to Dr. Raymond, adolescents typically have less efficient activity in the PFC because this part of the brain isn't fully developed until the age of 25. Until then, the brain is undergoing a process called myelinization, in which a protective substance called myelin wraps around the brain's neurons, helping the brain nerve cells work up to 10 to 100 times more efficiently. So when drugs are used at a young age, it affects the development of the PFC. A lot of kids use drugs at a young age to take the edge off because they come from broken homes. They want to be cool when everybody else is doing it in school. Well, when I didn't come from a broken home, but I experimented. I started drinking coffee at the age of 13, and I started drinking it heavily at the age of 19. I also started experimenting with tobacco, marijuana, alcohol, and hallucinogens between the ages of 17 and 24. While I very sparingly used hallucinogens, I started drinking heavily. Once I turned 21, drinking soon became an addiction because it was so easily accessible. I'd wake up thinking about drinking. I'd wake up thinking about giving it up. I'd exhaust most of my funds. I was often late with rent money, quite frequently late with rent money because of drinking. I had no savings account. I had a few near-death experiences between 2004 and 2010, one of which was a final wake-up call and a sobering moment, and luckily not a coffin. But in spite of all this, I still continued to drink. In hindsight, if I ate healthier and exercised more as a child and preteen, my addictions would have never kicked in full gear. I'd often raid the refrigerator and pantry for the sweetest snacks after school. I was young, my metabolism helped me stay thin, but my emotional brain ran my life. It got to the point when I was a young adult where I wouldn't fight cravings, letting my limbic system and my basal ganglia completely take over. I had no supervisor. Now I do, because I exercise and eat healthier. My prefrontal cortex could be stronger, but it is where it is, and it's a work in progress. While I drank heavily, I religiously followed Dr. Raymond's 4 C's: craving, compulsion, loss of control, and continued use in spite of consequences. Why do people do this? It's never too late to get sober, but it's really tough for an addict to resist a relapse. Heroin addicts suffer a rough withdrawal, making them feel sick, so they continue to use in spite of the consequences. Even when they've exhausted everything, they could be selling their bodies out in the street just for that fix, so they do not feel sick. Meth addicts experience extreme depression once they've beaten withdrawal because meth gave them such a dopamine rush that it becomes so salient to the brain in terms of pleasure that it's really difficult for them to feel happiness on their own terms. One recovered meth addict studied in Dr. Broderick's class mentioned that it takes the brain 6 months to a year to generate dopamine on its own. So that type of depression, that severe depression, could easily lead a person back to the drug. Drugs play with dopamine, serotonin, GABA, and endorphins. There's natural ways to stimulate these chemicals and natural ways, essentially, to get high or to feel the pleasure. Using illicit drugs, or any drugs in general, dramatically affects these chemicals. So, instead, eat healthy. Avoid fast food. Limit foods high in fat and sugar. Eat fruits, vegetables, drink green tea, and limit caffeine, and definitely exercise. This will keep dopamine levels healthy. Exercise increases dopamine. You feel great after a great workout. If you don't believe me, go try it. This will exercise in high dopamine levels help one stay focused. Exercise also allows one tryptophan to get to the brain faster. That allows healthy serotonin levels. Eating foods that are high in glutamic acid, such as spinach, oats, green tea, lentils, taking magnesium and vitamin B supplements, help healthy GABA function. Eat a little bit of chocolate a day, just a little bit. According to Dr. Raymond, cocoa has been shown to increase endorphin production in the brain. Engage in brain healthy activities such as exercise, learn a musical instrument, go back to school. Going to school for something one is passionate about increases healthy brain activity, especially when the person applies what they've learned. It is okay to get hooked on brain healthy activities, and doing so keeps the brain distracted from a relapse. Cravings are easily stifled when one's PFC can calm the limbic system without a struggle. The methadone program keeps the heroin addict addicted because it offers one solution, not considering the person's psychological addiction. If an addict makes it through withdrawal cold turkey, he has to deal with the cravings and the depression. But in patient rehabilitation, there he should be forced to stimulate healthy brain function by proper diet and exercise. Rehab needs to be a process where a person learns his or her brain and how to take control of it, and not a place where a person replaces one addiction with the next. To be proactive, parents need to consider their own behaviors and how they affect their children, let alone themselves. Make sure to have that conversation about drugs and alcohol, including inhalants. Don't leave them out. Have this conversation before they reach the experimental age that you and most adolescents reach. Rather than drugs or alcohol, a teenager may get hooked on playing sports, academics, making music, dating, all activities that promote healthy brain function, just so long as there's no serious head injury sustained. Give them the tools to have a healthy brain so by the time the myelin fully develops, they have a strong prefrontal cortex.